Chair, will you read the caption of Senate Bill 222?
Senate Bill 222 by Senator Stone, the 23rd, and others. A bill will be titled Enactment Title 17 of the OCGA relating on criminal procedure so as to create the Georgia Council on Criminal Justice Reform and provide for its members, chairperson, other officers, committees, staff, funding, duties, powers, and sunset of each such commission and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary offers the following substitute. Senate Bill 222, a bill will be titled Enactment Title 17 of the OCGA relating to criminal procedure so as to create the Georgia Council on Criminal Justice Reform and provide for its members, chairperson, other officers, committees, staff, funding, duties, powers, and sunset of such commission and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Stone of the 23rd offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Committee substitute to Senate Bill 222 in line 25 by replacing 15 with 18 by replacing line 35 with the following. The chairperson of the State Board of Pardons and for other purposes. Amendment 2 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Judiciary substitute Senate Bill 222 by replacing lines 1 and 2 with the following. To amend titles 15, 17, and 35 of the OCGA Courts, Criminal Procedure, and Law Enforcement so as to provide and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes a senator from the 23rd to speak to Senate Bill 222 and Amendment Number 1.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues. This is Senate Bill 222. Let me start by saying that criminal justice reform has been an unqualified success. It's been led by a bipartisan effort. Georgia has become a national leader in the area. We've even inspired the federal government to follow our lead. And that's easy to see because criminal justice reform has kept Georgians safe while saving taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. The proposals for criminal justice reform came over the last 7 years from the Criminal Justice Reform Council. That council lapsed last July. But Georgia still has problems that need addressing by the criminal justice reform effort. We have a high rate of incarceration. Recidivism is still a major problem. This legislation will address that by extending the council for another 6 years, by expanding the list of members of the council, all of whom are appointed by the governor, but recognizing the important role that state agencies play in implementing the process. We've added several agencies, and Amendment 1 adds the Board of Pardons and Paroles at their request. If this is approved, we'll continue to be a leader in the field. The council will continue to gather evidence that will aid in implementation of enactments that have already been made and in evaluating the success or failure of those efforts, and to consider other proposals to improve our system. I urge your support of Amendment 1. I do not oppose Amendment 2. Mr. President, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Chair recognizes a senator from the 48th for a question.
Apologize, Mr. President. I actually have parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
I challenge Amendment Number 2 for germaneness.
Stand by.
Mr. President, are there any questions?
Was your question to Amendment Number 2?
Yes, sir. He had said he didn't object to Amendment Number 2, so I wasn't sure.
We'll get to Amendment Number 2, or at this time we're addressing Amendment Number 1. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Senator, you have no questions.
I urge your support for SB 222.
For what purpose does the senator from the 48th rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I withdraw my
Your
germaneness
objection.
challenge. Yes,
Senator
sir.
from the 48th has withdrawn her objection.
Yes, sir. Thank
The
you.
germaneness. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 56th to speak to his amendment number 2.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senators. Last year, in the last installment of criminal justice reform, a last-minute addition was put on by our other chamber across the hall, which actually undid some of the things we were trying to accomplish with criminal justice reform. All this does is give the officer discretion once again for either a misdemeanor or local ordinance violation to issue a citation as opposed to arrest them on the site. As an example, if they were driving a car, they would then impound their car and immediately arrest them. This allows us to go back and have that discretion. It fits the exact mold of what we're trying to accomplish. With this, I worked with Justice Boggs and the council, all of our law enforcement and GMA, to come up with this language in order to bring it to where we all felt comfortable with it. If there are no questions, I would yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 46th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I yield.
Okay, I'm just curious, forget that part. I'm with you on Justice Boggs and the fingerprinting section. But what about this uniform citation starting there at lines 43? There, you reference in here Title 40-13-1 that refers to the Commissioner of Driver Services prepares a uniform traffic citation for traffic offenses. And here you're allowing the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to develop a uniform misdemeanor citation? Well,
That is correct,
explain
Senator.
that portion of this to me, why we need it and why we should let GBI do that instead of the legislature.
The reason for that is that the council believed that the GBI would be able to come up with something when working with law enforcement that they could all agree to that would be simple and easy and be able to use across the entire state. The uniform citation, which happened in the bill last year, which was created, caused a lot of challenges because the local cities and counties, the sheriffs and local police chiefs were unable to handle that at that time. So the consensus between the council was the GBI would be the right people in order to help develop something that would be consistent, being our main glue that pulls our law enforcement together in the state.
So would this be for things other than traffic-related offenses?
If you look down here, it'd be for misdemeanors or local ordinance violations on line 45.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
You have no more questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill or the amendments? All right, the question is now going to be on the adoption of amendment number 1. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? The chair hears none, and the floor amendment number 1 is adopted. We'll now take up amendment number 2 from the senator from the 56th. The question is on the adoption of amendment number 2. Is there objection to the amendment? Chair hears none, and the floor amendment number 2 is adopted. Question is now on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? The chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted as amended. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. I'd like to take a second to welcome back to the chamber former State Senator Mike Pollock with us this evening. Mr. Secretary, will you read the caption to Senate Bill 214?
Senate Bill 214 by Senator Martin of the Ninth and others, a bill will be titled Enactment Chapter 10 of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to barbers and cosmetologists so as to change the number of apprenticeship hours required for cosmetologists, hair designers, estheticians, nail technicians, master barbers, and barbers too, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th to speak to Senate Bill 214.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 214 will incentivize more participation in the apprentice program for cosmetologists, hair designers, estheticians, nail technicians, and barbers. We do this by lining up the number of hours required to complete an apprenticeship with the number of hours they are currently required to be taken if they choose the schooling route. In today's world, it might not be practical for financial reasons to attend cosmetology school. This will allow someone to work as an apprentice and receive pay while learning the field in which they want to enter. This is good for workforce development and good for those in our state that want to improve their situation in life. By reducing the number of required hours, we allow an apprentice who has already achieved competency in their field and is ready to take the test the opportunity to move forward with their career and better support themselves and their families. The second goal of this bill is to opening career pathways to those people that may have a criminal record. I believe a job is the best way to increase public safety by keeping those with criminal records from reoffending. And this belief is backed up by data. Having a job is one of the top predictors if someone will reoffend or not. We do that by removing the phrase that a candidate must be of good and moral character. If a person has paid their debts to society, we should allow them to go ahead and move forward and pursue careers. I will yield for any question. If there are none, I will yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I will yield.
Senator, I didn't know you were a beautician.
Well, I clearly am not a beautician, Senator.
I didn't say musician, I said beautician.
I'm amateur at best as a musician and definitely not a beautician. And don't claim to be one.
You have an additional question.
I will yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I will for the good senator from Atlanta.
Oh, I hate to tell you this. I'm not going to vote for your bill. And let me tell you why.
Have I reached my limit, Senator?
No. My concern is that these people, the cosmetology type of people, hair designers, cosmetologists, estheticians, nail techs, and barbers, I don't want anyone doing anything on me personally who has not had enough training. And so that's, I mean, I don't want anybody touching my face that's not had enough training, doing my hair, doing my nails, you know, doing any of that. So that's the reason I just wanted, you know, would you really want somebody doing that who hadn't had enough possible training?
Well, I will respond to your comment that I think was a question. We don't change. They still have to take. They're still responsible to take the test. It's still a large number of hours. There's already an apprentice program that is in place. We already have people who are succeeding through the apprentice program. And the hours that we're providing is just a minimum. They can continue to apprentice more hours if they have not mastered, or if the person they're working under does not believe they have mastered their skill. This just allows them, if they've achieved that competency, if they're ready to work on the good senator, that they can go ahead and take that test and pursue their goal, their career.
Well, the senator for the yield.
Of course.
I have a good friend whose husband owns a school of cosmetology, and he has the apprentice. And he didn't talk to me about this. He talked to me about the one we had several years ago. I personally, in watching some of these schools, because I've been to some of them, feel that they need some sort of training more than just the apprenticeship. And so I'm going to ask the question again. Would you want someone doing any of this? You know, I mean, you have wonderfully manicured nails and great haircut and all of that. Would you want anybody to personally work on you that may not have quite the qualifications to meet up to your standards?
I mean, I believe that apprenticeships have been very successful and continue to be successful all over the world in both these fields and in other fields. And I believe it's a very viable way to learn and to get the training they need. Again, we're not limiting the testing and the other competencies that they have to show. All we're doing is limiting the number of hours so that if they are ready to take that test, they can take it a little bit earlier. I mean, I would not want someone who's unqualified working on me, but I don't believe that this would cause problems there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the distinguished rules chairman for a question.
I tried to avoid it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
Hesitantly.
You ought to be. Now, let me ask you, I know it's getting late, but this is a truly important question. Isn't it true that your cosmetologist had to go to school for you to get that special Eddie Munster haircut that you're wearing?
The rules chairman is apparently knowledgeable of what he speaks. And I am in year 5, and I continue to get haze, so you're not the only one, Senator.
Senator for the Yield.
I will.
Isn't
Always
it
for
true
you.
that the pro tem and majority leader should be excused from this vote because something went wrong with theirs?
You are knowledgeable of what you speak, sir.
You have no more questions.
I yield the well. Uh-oh.
Senator Yield,
I will for my pro tem.
isn't it true that my barber charges me a finder's fee to cut my hair?
I sense the passion in your question.
Along with the senator from the 21st.
Clearly.
Thank you. No more questions, Senator.
Mr. President, I yield the well.
You yield the well. Any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 6. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. All right, want to give everybody an update on what the plans are here. We're on the last page of the rules calendar, and it's a little bit after 6, and it's the chair's opinion that we can keep pushing through this and get done with the calendar. I guess we could consider this going into extra innings, but let's get it done. Will the secretary read Senate Bill 227?
Senate Bill 227 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others. The bill will be titled an act to amend Code Section 40-2-86 of the OCGA relating to special license plate promoting and supporting certain worthy agencies, funds, or nonprofit corporations with proceeds dispersed to the general fund of the agency, fund, or nonprofit corporation so as to establish a specialty license plate to benefit the Georgia Alliance of Boys and Girls Club and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair once again recognizes the senator from the 9th with the nice haircut to speak to Senate Bill 227.
Thank you, Mr. President. I definitely appreciate the support of Senate leadership over here on that last bill. That was excellent. This bill is pretty tough. It creates a special license plate supporting the Georgia Alliance of the Boys and Girls Clubs, Inc. If there are any questions? If there are no questions, I'll yield
You
the
have
bill.
no questions, Senator. Any other senators wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none. The previous questions ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. For what purpose does the pro tem rise?
Parliamentary Inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, isn't it true that we really all appreciate the senator from the 9th, our esteemed education chair, and this great legislation he's bringing?
I'm sure the gentleman wishes that to be so. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 1. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, can you read the caption of Senate Bill 103?
Senate Bill 103 by Senator Davenport of the 44th and others, a bill entitled Enactment Article 2 of Chapter 3 of Title 6 of the OCGA, relating to powers of local governments as to air facilities so as to provide that airports owned, controlled, or operated by county, municipality, or other political subdivision of the state shall not assess any fee to a veteran for motor vehicle parking and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Transportation offers the following substitute Senate Bill 103, a bill entitled Enactment Article 2, Chapter 3, Title 6 of the OCGA, relating to powers of local governments as to air facilities so as to provide that airports owned, controlled, or operated by a county, municipality, or other political subdivision of the state shall designate and provide priority parking spaces for certain veterans and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 44th to speak to Senate Bill 103.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, I bring to you Senate Bill 103, a bill to support our veterans, those who have sacrificed so much and those who have put themselves in harm's way so that we can enjoy the freedoms here at home and around the world. This bill simply requires all public airports to have at least 3 priority parking spaces for veterans, and that is in Code 40-268, 69, 70, 84, and 85. Those that are Medal of Honor winners, those who disabled veterans, and those who have survived the attack on Pearl Harbor, and then, of course, our Purple Heart, awarded the Purple Heart. I just ask for your support and favorable vote on this bill, Senate Bill 103. If there are no questions, Mr. President, I yield the will.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 4. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you read the caption of Senate Resolution 67?
Senate Resolution 67 by Senator Anderson of the 24th and others. The resolution recognizes Senator William Bill S. Jackson in dedicating an interchange in his honor and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Transportation offers the following substitute to Senate Resolution 67, a resolution dedicating certain portions of the state highway system for other purposes. Part 1, whereas Senator William Bill S. Jackson has long been recognized by the citizens of the state for the vital role that he's played in leadership and his deep personal commitment to the welfare of the citizens of Georgia and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th to speak to Senate Resolution 67.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is Senate Resolution 67, honoring the former state senator in District 24, and also it's dedication of many other 6 roads and interchanges and bridges all across the state of Georgia for some great people that lived here in the great state of Georgia. I ask you for your vote and support on this Senate resolution, and as a great senator from the 24th would have said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I yield the will.
You have a question? You want your question? Chair recognizes the senator from the 45th for a question.
Would the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator, is it not true that former Senator Bill Jackson is truly the epitome of a Southern gentleman and has the most beautiful Southern gospel voice, probably in the state of Georgia, that we can think of? Is that not true?
I can't, you know, the man is truly a Southern gentleman. He truly is. And he loves music, he loves people, and he loves serving his country, and he's a great man. I've always called him the legend, Reverend Bill Jackson. I yield the will if there's no more questions.
You have one.
I ask you to vote for all these great people that lived in the great state of Georgia. Thank you.
Senator has yielded the well. Any other senators wish to speak for or against the measure? The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. For what purpose does the senator from the 41st rise?
Mr. President, Parliamentary Inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is there a state statute that says we have to wait 5 years for name of roads and bridges, or am I mistaken?
I would ask you to get with the author of the bill. For what purpose does the senator from the 26th rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, isn't it true that in order to name a road by DOT, you either have to be out of office 2 years or you have to be dead?
I believe the gentleman might know of what he speaks. All right. The question is now on the adoption of the committee substitute. For what purpose does the 41st Senator from the 41st rise?
Is it not true that I've been educated and my inquiry was incorrect, and I stand ready to vote for this?
I'm certain the gentleman knows of what he speaks with the senator from the 24th standing next to you. All right, the question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the adoption of the resolution by substitute? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Shall this resolution now be adopted? The question is on the adoption of the resolution by substitute. All those in favor will vote yea, opposed nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 50, the nays are 0. The resolution having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore adopted by substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you read the caption of Senate Bill 209?
Senate Bill 209 by Senator Jones of the 10th and others. A bill will be titled and acted in Code Section 20-14-33 of the OCJ relating to indicators of quality of learning in individual schools and school systems, comparison to state standards and rating schools and school systems, so as to eliminate the star rating for financial efficiency and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th to speak to Senate Bill 209.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I rise to kind of explain a little background information on Senate Bill 209. I read in the paper back several months ago, and I put a copy of this handout on your desk, but it talked about how Georgia schools that have more students with disabilities are punished as part of this rating formula. And it went on to quote some schools in Twiggs County, down in Middle Georgia. It talked about Bibb and Monroe County schools, the Houston County schools, and it talked about how these schools had inherently received a lower star rating. This is the financial equivalent star rating that DOE puts out every year after they collect the data from the school. Now, it's important to note that this star rating is based on the cost of educating per pupil. So when you get a smaller school system that has a cost of educating students, particularly students with disability or some other kind of cost that it may incur, they don't have the luxury of spreading it out of a large system like Gwinnett County or a system I represent, which is DeKalb County, which has over 100,000 students. So as this bill was going through committee, and the language of this bill was sent to me by DOE, and on your desk, I put a copy of a letter from our state school superintendent, Richard Woods, in support of 209. And basically what DOE said is that we would like to still collect the data and aggregate the data, but we don't want to take that information and force rank the school systems in the state of Georgia. So what Senate Bill 209 does is give DOE the discretion of not having to force rank the 180 school systems in the state of Georgia. And Mr. President, if there aren't any questions, I will yield the well.
You have no questions, Senator.
Thank you, and I encourage you to vote favorably for Senate Bill 209.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 23rd to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't rise to speak against bills very often, And in this case in particular, because I voted for it in committee without much thought. But the rating that we're doing away with here is a financial efficiency rating. It basically tells you which schools are getting more bang for their public buck. And there are cases, I have 11 counties that I can point to where a school system with very little resources produces very good results. I think this is something that the public and taxpayers need to know, and in retrospect, I plan to vote against this bill. If there are no questions, I'll yield the will.
You have a question. Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
Yes.
Senator, are you aware that the data that DOE collects is still the same, so they will still have that aggregate data made available?
I understand that, and that was one of the reasons that I leaned towards it in committee. However, I think it's something that the public needs to know and not just have to dig to find.
Senator, further yield?
Yes.
Senator, are you aware that DOE and Ted Beck, who's the CFO for DOE, testified in committee?
Yes.
That they actually force rank the data, and they know that it's not an apples to apples comparison, which is why they asked for this legislation.
I'm aware of that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
You have no more questions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I'll be very brief. I'd like to speak against this bill because I think we as a Senate and as a legislature owe it to our taxpayers to be accountable both for academic performance and also financial performance. I will say this, not all districts are the same, and there's a lot of difference in the analysis of these figures from the standpoint those districts that have students are the greatest challenge, and I'll just mention two of them. A district's and a school's transiency rate has a great deal to do with the efficiencies of the educational side. A very stable school will typically outperform one that has a great deal of churn. But all that being said, we need to look at the formula. We may need to tweak the formula a little bit, but we need financial accountability. We need to be able to show the public, and it be a public record, what the academic performance is in relationship to the financial investment. GOSA has a measure that they have called Beat the Odds, which takes in some of these risk factors. I think when you fold beat the odds analysis into the 5-star rating, it may give you a clearer picture. And again, we may need to look at the formula, but I don't think we need to do away with the only instrument, to my knowledge, that we have of financial accountability. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I'll yield the will.
You have no questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none. For what purpose do you rise? Senator from the 10th.
Mr. President, at the appropriate time, I'd like to move to table Senate Bill 209.
This would be the appropriate time to make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we table Senate Bill 209.
Senator from the 10th has moved that we put Senate Bill 209 on the table. Is there objection? Hearing no objection, Senate Bill 209 is placed on the table. Mr. Secretary, will you read the caption of Senate Bill 219?
Senate Bill 219 by Senator Jordan of the 6th and others, a bill we title enactment Article 1 of Chapter 1 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to education, shows to require high school students and students seeking a general educational development diploma to correctly answer 60% of the questions on the United States civics test for purposes of being eligible to receive a high school diploma or a general educational development diploma and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Education and Youth Committee offers the following substitute Senate Bill 219. A bill will be titled and enactment Article 1 of Chapter 1 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to education, so as require high school students and students seeking general educational development diploma to correctly answer 60% of the questions on the United States Citizenship Civics Test and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 6th to speak to Senate Bill 219.
Thank you, Mr. President. In 2017, the Annenberg Public Policy Center reported in their Constitution Day civic study that only 1 in 3, 37%, could name the rights protected by the First Amendment. Only 48% knew that the First Amendment includes freedom of speech. And I was shocked by this, and I think it says something profound about where we are as a nation. Without a solid foundation of civic education, how can we expect civic engagement? How can we expect constituents to be informed voters and participants in the legislative process if they don't even realize they can be, and why it is important for them, their families, and their communities? Now, I put a sample of some of the questions on your desk, and the results were quite shocking in terms of people who actually turned them back into me. And they underscore the reason why we desperately, desperately need this at this point in time. First, I want to recognize the senator from the 20th District who got a perfect score. The others will remain anonymous. What is the supreme law of the land? Trump. Who is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military? Trump. What do we call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution? The 10 Commandments. What is the purpose of the Declaration of Independence? And then this was a write-in. Announce our independence from /Mexico. Some of it I just got to skip. Which is a branch of the U.S. government, authoritative /Trump. It goes on and on and on, and that is from the members of this body. This is the right time for this bill, and basically what it is it is the questions that every person who comes to this country seeking to be a citizen, the test they have to take. And so what I would say to you is that if we require this out of the people that we want to become citizens of this country, then it makes sense that we would require that of our own citizens. In terms of if anyone is concerned about testing or the like, we have confirmed and consulted with the Department of Education, and this is part of the curriculum or will be part of the curriculum for U.S. history for high school. And so it's one of those things where it's already there in terms of the content, so the curriculum wouldn't have to be added, but we can make sure that we have a focus on civics, just like we have a focus on math or English, and I think we can all agree that right now a focus on civics and civic engagement might be a good thing. I'll yield the well if there are no questions.
You have questions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 18th. He waves. Chair recognizes the senator from the 5th.
Is it Senator Yale?
Yes.
Isn't it true that since I've been here, I didn't ask any questions?
You did not.
Okay.
Thank goodness, because I would hate to have to call you out up here.
I was isn't it true that people like me came to this country and waited 15 years and I had to answer 100 questions before I got my citizenship?
That is true.
So how many questions somebody native born in here have to answer before they pass the test?
Senator, as you know, it comes from a range of 100 questions, and then you just have to do 60%. And usually it's an oral exam with respect to the citizenship. We've told within the bill, with respect to the local school systems, they can figure out how it makes sense for them to do the testing. But normally, in terms of the U.S. citizenship testing, someone will come in and then you'll be asked 10 questions orally and you have to respond. But from the range of the 100. So you never know which 10 exactly it's going to be. And then to pass, you have to answer 6 correctly, so 60%.
Senator Yellen, other questions?
Sure.
Isn't it true you have to get 70% in the citizenship questions in order to be naturalized?
That's not what I've been told, but if that's true, then you would know better than I.
I think I had to get 70% before I was allowed to get my citizenship.
You probably got 70%, no doubt, or higher.
I think I get 100%.
Very good, very good. See?
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Does the senator continue to yield?
I'll yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th.
Senator, do you yield?
Yes.
Is it not true that the test done by the Woodrow Wilson Foundation showed that only 36% of native-born Americans can pass the immigration test?
The senator knows of what he speaks.
Thank you.
Do you continue to yield?
One more.
Chair recognizes the senator from the coast, senator from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Sure.
Again, why is it important that we require this test to be taken, Senator?
It's important because we have to have a focus on civic education and civic engagement. I think that's something we've lost in recent years with respect to high school education.
Would you yield a few more questions? How would we know that people who are in this country illegally have the knowledge of the things that are on this test?
Senator from the 3rd, these are high schoolers who are enrolled in high school who will be graduating from high school, and that's who would be required to take this test.
But shouldn't people who are in this country, whether they're born here or come here, if they're going to live here, shouldn't they have the knowledge of these principles and truths that are in this test?
Absolutely.
So, do you think that it's important that this country do everything that it could to protect its borders and prevent illegal people from coming in this country illegally?
I'll tell you this is what I think. As someone who is from a family that immigrated to this country from Canada and from Scotland and from Ireland and from Germany, we are a country of immigrants and we are diverse, and that is a great and amazing thing. And that's why it's so important for people to know exactly what this country and the foundation of this democracy is built in, so that they'll know that they need to continue to be welcoming so that we can continue to be the greatest country on earth.
And isn't it true that the only way that we know that is if people follow the process and come to this country legally, just like the senator from the 5th, and just like your parents or grandparents or your family, and just like my family, and the family of many other people that have immigrated to this country. Thank you. That's all I have.
Does the senator continue to yield?
No.
Senator has yielded the well. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair recognizes the senator from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator from the 6th, I stood here earlier this week and endured about 10 minutes of cross-examination from you. I was disappointed that you yielded before I was able to ask my questions, which were, isn't it true that states like Indiana and Arizona and Texas and Wisconsin have all passed or are working on passing similar measures? And I was going to further commend you for following the leadership of those Republican states in proposing such a fantastic Republican bill.
The senator has yielded the well. The question is now on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none, and the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. For what purpose does the minority leader rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that some of the states that he mentioned, Republican states, also have full Medicaid expansion like Arizona?
Senator speaks with great passion. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 49, the nays are 0. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, can you read the caption to House Bill 92?
House Bill 92 by Representative Rutledge of the 109th and others, a bill will be titled enactment of Article 2 of Chapter 32 of Title 36 of the OCGA relating to the Georgia Municipal Courts Training Council so as to provide that training hours completed by a municipal court judge in excess of those required may carry over to the following year and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th to present House Bill 92. Check that. We'll do it in a minute. Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th to speak to House Bill 92.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I bring you this pink bill, and it's pretty simple. Simply allows our municipal court judges, if they complete training hours in excess of the number of hours that are required, that those hours can carry over to the next year, but no more than 6. I'm going to stand here for about 20 more minutes.
You have no questions.
So, no question. All right, then I'll yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against this bill? The chair hears none. The previous questions ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. Shall the bill now pass? The questions on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 46 and nays are 0. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 10th to recognize some special guests with us in the gallery this evening.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of this body. I ask that you join with me in recognizing some very special guests that I entertain at the Capitol every single year. These are students from my alma mater at the University of Pennsylvania. They take their spring break and they travel the South to look at several of the civil rights sites. And every year for the last 15 years, they made Georgia as one of their stops here. Valerie Cruz is their leader, and I would ask that you would join me in recognizing my students that take their spring break to travel the South and learn about civil rights from the University of Pennsylvania.
Mr. Secretary, can you read the caption to Senate Bill 178?
Senate Bill 178 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others, a bill be titled enactment in Chapter 3 of Title 44 of the OCGA relating to regulation of specialized land transactions so as to provide for statements of account under the Georgia Condominium Act and the Georgia Property Owners Association and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Special Judiciary offers the following substitute: Senate Bill 178, a bill be titled enact to amend Chapter 3 of Title 44 of the OCGA relating to regulation of specialized land transactions so as to provide for statements of account under the Georgia Condominium Act and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others offers the following amendment: amend the Senate Committee substitute to Senate Bill 178 by replacing lines 104 through 116 with the following: an association or its authorized agent may charge a reasonable fee for the preparation and delivery of a statement of account and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 9th to speak to Senate Bill 178.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know the hour is late and we're ready to go home. Am I correct, Senator from the 3rd? SB 178, I took this on to try to bring together a battle that we had last year on the floor and try to bring some people together to try to have a negotiation. And the negotiation is this. Under current law, when you're dealing with condominium associations and homeowner associations for closing, an HOA or the condo association must issue, and this is where the code begins, a statement of account that consists of assessments past due or unpaid together with late charges and interest applicable thereto against that condominium unit. The code provides for a $10 fee for that information. I'd read it again, but you don't want me to read it again. The issue that this deals with is when you look at what that is basically an account balance. There are differing opinions as what that may mean. And so that's why I said, hey, let's try to fix it. The bill before you today actually sets out a very clear framework of what a statement would be, what an account statement would be. There's also a sticking point in this bill to the fact that there was, and I apologize that you've all gotten blown up on your emails and in your offices and phone calls, but we couldn't quite get there to come to a compromise. But what I want to do, I want to make sure that you realize that in here, the most important thing is that framework that is set out. And it was actually negotiated by both parties last year. I dropped an amendment that actually would do away with the fees, and it would move more to an open market system with complete transparency so that every unit owner would be notified of what the fees are charged. And then furthermore, it empowers the associations to be able to set that fee if they choose to set that fee where they want to for those services. We're still not there. I know that you guys are getting blown up, and I understand what's happening here. And so what I'm going to do when I get back to my desk is I'm going to move to table this bill so that we can go home and we can move on to the second half of our session. Mr. President, I yield the well.
The senator has yielded the well. For what purpose does the senator from the 9th rise?
I don't have my card. I hope I get it right. Mr. President, I move we table SB 178.
Senator from the 9th has moved that Senate Bill 178 be placed on the table. Is there any objection? There's no objection, and Senate Bill 178 is placed on the table. This time we'd like to recognize some special guests that we've got here that have stayed here as long as all of us have, and that is a long list of pages. We could bring the pages into the chamber and recognize them. We've got Robert Beckham, William Bowles, Adam Brennan, Bo Bushnell, Vivi Clark, Paige Ford, David Heath, Rachel Heath, Cersei Hobbs, Charlotte Martin, Michael Massey, Corey Pitts, Hank Stevens, and Judson Bowles. For what reason does the senator from the 9th rise?
Mr. President, wouldn't this be a parliamentary inquiry?
State your inquiry.
Wouldn't this be a perfect opportunity to completely embarrass my soon-to-be 14-year-old daughter, Charlotte Martin, who's there in the red dress?
Thank you very much. Thank you. For what reason does the majority leader rise?
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand in recess pending the receipt of the last message from the House, and upon receipt of such message, that the Senate stand adjourned until 9 o'clock on Friday, March 8th.
Does the Secretary have any announcements?
Mr. President, rules is canceled, so there are no committee meetings.
The chair has a couple of announcements. One is a reminder that tomorrow morning is 9 a.m. Secondly, I've been told that it's John Bullock Day, and there's tradition to wear blue jeans. And we also want to make sure that everybody participates in dinner tonight. There's a tremendous amount of dinner in the same room down in the Senate, Secretary of the Senate's break room, so make sure you go down there and grab dinner. Does any other senators wish to make an announcement? All right. The Majority Leader has moved that the Senate stand in recess pending receipt of the last message from the House, and upon receipt of such message, that the Senate stand adjourned until 9 o'clock a.m. on Friday, March 8th, 2019. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes clearly have it, and the Senate stands adjourned.